Whew. Okay, we can all take a sigh of relief. The Warriors nearly gave up another seismic lead and was about to potentially suffer another horrific loss, but they got away with it. Steph Curry was able to hit a huge three-point shot in the midst of a giant Rockets run. It was a 4-point game with under 4 minutes left to go. Steph Curry is able to relocate, sidestep against Jeff Green, fake him out, and get an open three, and that three gave the Warriors a 7-point cushion, and that allowed to give them some breathing room. And then they were able to execute down the stretch just enough. Draymond was able to hit a huge 3-point shot that really helped seal the game. And yeah, we've seen the Warriors just crash and burn so many times in a game like this, even against a team like the Rockets, who were missing a bunch of key players and just was lifeless for a chunk of this game. When the Warriors lose momentum, they are capable of losing to any team in the NBA. Having said that, they got away with this win. That makes them 3-1 in the Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler era. They're now 28-27 on the season, and they have 27 games remaining on the season. So that's a lot of games for the Warriors to do a lot, because there's not much difference in the standings between the 10th seed and the 6th seed. Yeah, take a look. Only 3 games separate the Clippers and the Warriors from the 6th seed to the 10th seed. So a lot can happen in the final 27 games. We'll see when Jonathan Kuminga comes back into action, because him returning is obviously going to change some things up for the Warriors. What those changes look like remain to be seen, but hopefully he'll be back sooner than later so that the Warriors can get to the bottom of this and figure some things out. At the time of this video, some games are still going on. Actually, the Kings are about to lose to the Pelicans. Thank goodness, because they were on a 3-game winning streak. And if they won this game, well, they would have had a 1 full game advantage over the Warriors. And not so fortunately, the Mavs just took care of the Heat at home, which gives them a 1.5 game advantage over the Warriors now. Very, very unfortunate. The Warriors obviously should have beaten that team last night, and at most the Mavs should have had a half a game advantage over the Warriors. Instead, they have a 1.5 game advantage. All of these games, every single game at this point matters. Anyway, before we move forward, welcome back to the channel. As always, excuse my volume for this video. I still have this ear clogging situation. It's clogged right now. I can't even really hear myself very well, and there's actually a good deal of pain here, so I'm trying to lower the volume when I speak. Having said that, be sure to hit that subscribe button, the notification bell, and that like button for that algorithm so that it gets out to all the Warriors fans around the world. And as always, let's get straight to it. Now that the Warriors get to take a week off because it is the All-Star break, much needed rest needed for soon to be 37-year-old Steph Curry, soon to be 35-year-old Draymond Green, and 35-year-old Jimmy Butler. Obviously, the Warriors' veteran players and their most reliable players are getting up there in age. And although Curry has looked much better in recent games, we know that he's been dealing with some level of tendonitis in his knees, and more importantly, that sprained thumb, which I do think that he's mostly over, but an extra week off and some extra rest will allow him to be rejuvenated for these final 27 games coming up. Draymond Green has really not been the same, especially from an offensive standpoint, since he's come back from that injury. Although he definitely showed signs in this game against the Rockets, shot 5 of 8 from the field, 13 points. But yes, I don't think he's been as crisp or sharp as he could be or was in the earlier part of the season. Yeah, and his passing has just been all over the map, especially tonight. Those 4 turnovers were just absolutely awful. He's just throwing a lot of wild passes, and I just think that his passing over the years has really diminished, and I'm really glad that we're not persistently stuck in that motion offense where the Warriors are just playing traffic cop offense with traffic cop Draymond Green at the top of the key, just holding the ball like this and waiting for some action to go down, and it's just the most predictable thing ever, and the defense is completely laying off of him because they know he's not doing anything other than passing the ball. The offense has definitely evolved some from all that junk. So that's good news. And Jimmy Butler, obviously now he is starting to kind of get back into shape, and with some time off, it'll give the Warriors a chance and opportunity to organize better what they want to do. Hopefully Stotts will be able to come up with some creative ideas to really get that two-man game between Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler going. Now, having said that, Steve Kerr finally made the change. He finally made the change in that starting lineup. Finally got Buddy Hield out of there. And he got Quinton Post out of there as well. These are the two key changes that they needed to make. And Steve Kerr finally went and did it. And while to me, it's still a suboptimal lineup at the end of the day, it's better than what they were doing before. All we can do at this point is take baby steps. And because there's not a bunch of holes from a defensive standpoint, the Warriors were able to hold ground with that unit from a defensive standpoint, and the Rockets never really got going. The reason I say that this lineup isn't the one that I would prefer to start a game in the first and the third quarters is because, again, Draymond is 35 years old. Jimmy Butler is 35 years old, and they are both undersized at these positions at power forward and center, and you don't want to run these guys to the ground, because when you're forcing these guys to play a weight class up, which they are capable of doing, it's still taxing. They're still smaller than a lot of the guys that they end up having to guard on a lot of nights. And especially for Draymond, who's had some really scary injuries in recent years with that weird lower back situation, his calf sometimes, these very sensitive injuries that are very murky. We don't want him to be taxed, and we don't want him to be playing center and guarding the other team's biggest players all day and night. And you want to hear something crazy about Jimmy Butler? This guy has played more than 70 games just 2 times in his career. This is Jimmy Butler's 13th year in the league, and he's only played 70 plus games just 2 times in his career. Matter of fact, since the 2017 and 18 season, Jimmy Butler has only played 60 plus games 2 times in that span. That is a 7-year span we're talking about. In the last 7 years, Jimmy Butler has managed to play 60 plus games just twice. And you can kind of see why. He crashes to the floor a lot because he gets fouled a lot. He gets fouled hard because he goes to the paint hard. Does that sound like a guy that you want to play at the power forward spot all day and night? No, absolutely not. You want to use him at the power forward spot probably in 2 very specific scenarios. When Steve Kerr wants to and elects to go to his small lineups to close the second quarter and the fourth quarter, that is when you want to transfer Draymond and Jimmy Butler and shift them over a weight class the way he's been doing, except he's doing it with the starting lineup. That's just not viable long term, and the season is starting to wind down, and this is not the time where you want to tax these guys and potentially have them suffer some kind of injury at a really inopportune time. If any of these guys go missing, the Warriors are going to be in trouble. And so Steve Kerr needs to make it easier for these guys to ensure that they can stay healthy long term, get a big in there, be it Kevon Looney or Trayce Jackson-Davis. And even though a lot of the Warriors fan base is really down on Trayce Jackson-Davis, Trayce, when he's surrounded by the right group of players, he's really good for the Warriors defense. And again, I mean, just think about how much easier Trayce makes Draymond and Jimmy Butler's job, because Trayce at the center spot allows Draymond to roam at the power forward spot. That's a much easier job than anchoring. And then you put Jimmy Butler into that small forward spot where now he can focus on one-on-one defense and pickpocketing in the lanes rather than once again banging down low with a power forward all day and night and taxing himself that way. And again, Jimmy Butler, since he can play power forward, he has an advantage at the other positions. Even as a small forward, he has a good size advantage there. And Draymond at power forward is just appropriate. And since we can pretty much see that Steve Kerr has now really settled into the idea of probably Potts starting at that shooting guard spot, well, that's okay. Steph Curry, Potts, that's okay, as long as you have these 3 forwards in front of them. That makes them much bigger, much stronger. And you know, it's time for the Warriors as a team and the fan base to collectively stop talking about the need for spacing. Look what the need for spacing and look what compromising their defense for set spacing has done for this team. Absolutely nothing. You got Buddy Hield in the starting lineup, for crying out loud. Do you guys want Buddy Hield in the starting lineup because he provides spacing? No. Do you want Quinton Post, who's limited in so many other facets of the game, to be in that starting lineup and be completely overwhelmed because you want spacing? Like, come on. Like, don't get me wrong, spacing is important, but it's not so important that you compromise your defense over it. Then you become an unserious team because now you're just prioritizing getting jump shots over two-way basketball. And that's not good. That's not a path to a consistent style of basketball where you are able to dominate when you're on the floor. And you should dominate when you have Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, and Draymond. But the surrounding conditions have to be optimized. So I am going to continue to push for this idea because that is what's best for this team. That is what is best to protect their older players that are in the starting lineup. That is what allows the Warriors to play bigger, be able to grab rebounds in an easier way. Because you think about tonight, the Rockets dominated the glass. They had 15 offensive rebounds against the small lineups that the Warriors were throwing out there. And when you can't grab rebounds and the other team is just getting second opportunities, third opportunities left and right like that, it is deflating for the team's defense. The other team starts to gain all kinds of momentum and confidence. And any team that is trying to be a playoff caliber team or a championship caliber team never persistently has these situations where they're completely vulnerable defensively. And my issue with it is that they don't have to be so vulnerable defensively. It is a choice of Steve Kerr's to go to these small and tiny lineups. So let me show you some of these funky and wonky lineups that Kerr once again put out there throughout the course of this game. I mean, he's just finding new ways to be super weird. He'll have 2 point guards on the floor and a shooting guard on the floor to form like the strangest 3-guard lineups that are just not good enough defensively. And of course, he just can't go a game without running a 4-guard lineup. And then there are times where the lineup looks traditional, appropriate, normal, and those are going to be viable and good lineups on most nights. Yeah, and as you guys know, I like Pat Spencer, but why is he in the lineup next to Steph Curry and Pods? What is the point or purpose of that 3-guard lineup? It just doesn't make any sense to me. You brought in Pat Spencer into the rotation because GP2 is missing tonight. I mean, does Steve Kerr not realize that he doesn't necessarily have to run a 10-man rotation? He could just run a 9-man rotation and give some of the guys that are in rotation a few more minutes. I mean, maybe because he wants to give the starters a little more rest in this game or something along those lines. But then just bring in Jackson Rowe. Why you gotta bring another point guard into the equation while Steph Curry and Potts are still on the floor and you're running a 3-guard lineup like that? I think he also had at one point Pat Spencer, Potts, and Buddy Hield on the floor at the same time. Like, these are not good lineups. These are fundamentally broken lineups. You run a lineup like that against most full teams, you're going to have trouble and you're going to give momentum back to the other team and you're going to stink it up. In that sense, Jonathan Kuminga can't come back soon enough because he's going to ensure that the Warriors are always going to be bigger than smaller. As for Potts and Moody being in the starting lineup, I mean, it was a really great redemption game for them overall because last night's game, oh my goodness, it was just such a disaster, particularly for Moody. And his hustle was really all over the place in this game, and he did a really good job against Jalen Green. Moody didn't necessarily make a big impact from a scoring standpoint, but he did stuff the stat sheet with some defensive numbers, 6 rebounds, 2 steals, 2 blocks, and that's impactful. The Warriors need that, and he provided that for them tonight. And Potts had anywhere from a good stretch to a great stretch to not such a great stretch in this game. But goodness gracious, does Steve Kerr absolutely love this guy. He played 39 minutes tonight and led the team in minutes played. But you know what? I'll take that over Buddy Hield in the starting lineup all day and night. Just no Buddy Hield. Buddy Hield on one of his cold spells, 1 of 5 from the field tonight. There was a critical moment in that third quarter where the Warriors lost momentum and they tried to get it back. Steph Curry is back in the final possession of that third quarter in a 12-point game, trying to extend it to a 14 or a 15-point lead. So Steph Curry creates a play and is able to find Buddy Hield for an open look, and he's not able to hit it. I'm glad that Buddy Hield is out of the starting lineup. Hopefully we'll never have to experience that nonsense ever again. I really think when the Warriors are fully rostered, Buddy Hield needs to be out of the rotation. He's just not a real player. He's just not good enough to be a part of a team that is trying to contend for something. His presence allows the Warriors to run these senseless, ridiculous lineups, right? Pat Spencer, Potts, and then you gotta put Buddy Hield in there. No, you really don't. And if he wasn't on this team, Steve Kerr wouldn't be able to formulate these preposterous lineups. But because Buddy Hield is there, Steve is doing all kinds of crazy things all day and night. And when Kuminga comes back, somebody has to be off the rotation. And it really has to be Buddy Hield. The Warriors should not use this guy going into the playoffs. He should not be a rotational piece for the Warriors in the playoffs. He's just not consistent enough on either end of the floor to warrant giving him a bunch of playing time. Meanwhile, Quinton Post came off the bench, played just 7 minutes, and was 0 for 3 from the floor. And it just kind of felt like he lost a sense of confidence the night before. And this is what I'm talking about when it comes to Steve Kerr kind of breaking down the talents that are on his team, just overwhelming them by forcing them to do too much. He did it with Trayce Jackson-Davis as well. You're putting Trayce next to these 3-guard lineups that most players cannot protect. And then that makes Trayce look bad. And now Trayce is completely out of the rotation. Same thing with Quinton Post. He should not be in that starting lineup. He never should have been in that starting lineup. When you could see that he was overwhelmed and not useful in that starting lineup in his first 2 starts, well, you gotta make a quick adjustment and stop doing it instead of doing it for like 6, 7, 8 games. And now his confidence is down. And in tonight's game, he was pretty much useless. Steve's gotta stop putting his players into these situations where they look worse than they need to be, and then they fall out of favor with the fan base, and then he takes them out of the rotation, takes them out of the game, takes their confidence away. I mean, he just systemically breaks these players down, especially the young ones, and this just is not right. Guy Santos played 17 minutes in this one, which is generally good. He didn't have a very good game tonight. He was just kind of overzealous at various times. And he's not some guy that you want to overly rely on. Remember, Guy Santos is a role player and he is a connecting player. He's not some guy that you want to like go to, and his services are best used when he's surrounded by a lot of good guys on the floor. You don't want him in a situation or scenario where he ends up looking like one of the key contributors on the floor. And there was at one point where Steve Kerr took Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, and Draymond all off the floor. And that's something that Steve really doesn't want to be doing. One of Jimmy Butler or Steph Curry should be on the floor at all times for this team. Anyway, more than anything, I'm just relieved that the Warriors got away with this win. Every win moving forward matters. Every game matters. Having said that, in the downtime during the All-Star break, I will be coming out with some film breakdowns. That Bulls game in particular in that 3rd quarter when Steph Curry went hyper-nova. That Mavs game last night, all the corruption and all the nasty things that the refs were doing. Some of the limitations of their younger players and all this kind of stuff. And at some point, I'm also going to have to break down where some of these nonsensical 3-guard lineups and small lineups where the Warriors just don't have enough size and they're just relinquishing all kinds of momentum to the other team. I'll be looking to find whatever clips I can so I can do some of these film breakdowns. If you followed this channel long enough, then you know that I do film breakdowns. This season, I haven't gotten a chance to do a whole lot of that. So I'll take this opportunity over the next week or so to put some of those out. So especially for a lot of you guys who are new to the channel, you can look forward to that. I'll be posting that more during the afternoonish time rather than the super late evening time that I tend to post these days after the Warriors are done with games. Thank you so much for watching as always. I'm glad that we have some time off now. Enjoy that time off. Take care of yourselves. And I'll see you in about a week or so. Until next time.